Watch, I said, in 8 years, we're going to have a dog running for president. And today I realized, honestly, if we elected a dog, we'd be better off. At least a dog has more humanity. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا صدق الله العظيم وصدق مولانا النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك ومن الشاهدين ومن الشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Nisa, ayah number 135, O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against yourselves, your parents or your close relatives. Be they rich or poor, Allah is best to ensure their interest. So do not let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that Allah is certainly all aware of what you do. So inshallah, we'll be talking a little bit about being honest with ourselves, being honest with those around us, and being honest when it comes to decision making. You know, I asked somebody, I was like, what should I talk about today? He said, you should talk about the election. I said, we'll avoid that to the best of our abilities, but we'll talk about it from as much of an Islamic perspective as we can. You know, we're not going to try to endorse any candidates. So, you know, one of the things that everybody is polarized by right now, everybody's, attention, oh, who's going to become the next president? Who's going to become the next president? You know, things like this. People are just focused on that, as though whoever becomes the next president will ensure somebody's Jannah or not. Or whether whoever becomes the next president will instill, 5 times daily adhan from the masjid minarets or something like that. People are so concerned. And it seems as though they're less concerned about their own lives even. They're so concerned about the elections. Everybody's phone right now is on politico.com. They're seeing what it looks like, the electoral college. We're just so polarized by this. And they make it a spectacle. Billions of dollars are spent in ad money. Now they've changed over to, digital ads. Before it used to be TV screens would be flooded with this. That's all you would see for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. And it would just be running one ad, insulting the other candidate, so on and so forth for weeks and weeks. And we saw the power of money in politics when one party, I'm not going to try to avoid taking names of parties, but one party basically deplatformed their own candidate and incumbent just because they spoke out against the Zionist entity. They deplatformed and made sure their own candidate lost. They made sure so much money was flooded into that campaign that somebody who is pro-Palestinian, pro-life as we'd like to call it, loses the election just because they spoke out against the Zionist entity. So we know this is a game of money. So we should not be looking at the elections from the perspective of who wins, what will happen for me, but rather what will happen for the greater ummah. What will happen for the greater ummah? What will happen for the greater Muslim community? How will they benefit? And we have to look at, who will do the most justice for the Muslims or the least amount of damage on the lower part of the ticket. Right? A lot of times we don't pay attention to who's running for our county commissioner. We're not paying attention to who's running for the state representatives and stuff like this. We have to also hold them accountable. They make a big difference in the way we lead our lives. They also make a big difference when we're trying to build masajid, when we're trying to build graveyards, when we're trying to build Islamic schools. These are the people who can either say yay or nay to certain zoning decisions. These are the people who can say yay or nay even in certain cases and circumstances where it may be approved to build a graveyard, but the community comes out just because it's a Muslim graveyard. We hear about so many circumstances all around the country where communities or cities come out against Muslims because they want to put an Islamic graveyard there. An Islamic graveyard is honestly more environmentally friendly. We're not putting any wood in the ground, we're not putting any metals in the ground, we're just putting ashes to ashes. We're just putting the human bodies in there. And that's it, with some cloth which will become disintegrated into the ground. So we're more green friendly. But yet when it becomes the case that a Muslim wants to put a graveyard, it becomes a big issue. And in cases like this, we have to make sure that our state representatives, our county commissioners, so on and so forth, understand that Muslims are a part of your community, Muslims are a part of your society. They also have rights, they also have needs, and they also have requirements. And you need to fulfill them, and you also need to respect them like you respect the rights of Jews, Christians, and other communities as well. And until we don't talk with these politicians on a local level and make them understand, these feelings, these sentiments, they won't go up. They won't go up. We need to make sure they go up. And we need to make sure they understand that we as Muslims, we're a people of justice. We're a people who understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching each and every one of our steps. He is watching each and every one of our steps. And that if we say or do something wrong, we will be held accountable by the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi. And if we as Muslims don't understand this, we don't acknowledge this, and we don't act like this, then who do we have to blame but ourselves when people are consistently speaking bad about the akhlaq, the mannerisms, and the ways Muslims interact with other people? So we have to be on our best behavior. We have to put out the best image. But this doesn't mean being a hypocrite and just putting out the image for public, but this means bringing this adl, this justice, into our own lives. Bringing it into our own lives. Becoming better as Muslims. Becoming better as people, and holding ourselves to a higher standard. Holding ourselves to a higher standard. This is why when people look at the olden age of Islam, they look at the Sahaba. Right? Sahaba were not Anbiya. They were not perfect. Right? They were not perfect. But we don't look at and polarize ourselves with the flaws or mistakes Sahaba made. We look at the good things that they did. We look at the differences they made in society. And when we look at these things, we realize that whenever they made a decision, they made a decision based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is requiring from them at that point in time. And if they made a decision contrary for that, or contrary to that, another Sahabi would tell them that, hey, the decision you've made, this goes against what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. This is the way in which we should go. And they would, in most cases, immediately change their path and correct themselves. So we see this level of integrity amongst them. And then we look at the mandates and the laws which were set out by Muslim rulers such as Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Doing justice even when you're the ruler or you're the leader. And these days, we have politicians, we have leaders, we have political leaders who are not willing to hold themselves accountable at all. Rather, if you call them out, they will tell you, oh, you don't realize the damage you're doing by saying this. Because they know sometimes we speak the truth in front of them and they don't like it. And they don't like it because it tarnishes their image. We have in this country many times Muslim politicians, they get to the forefront. They win their seats on the back of the Muslim vote, on the back of the Muslim support. Right? And then when they get the support, and the Muslims say, can you speak out about this issue? Please say something. Then the seat becomes more important. Then the seat becomes more important. No, I can't say that. I'll lose the seat. And if I lose the seat, I can't speak on behalf of you then. You weren't speaking on behalf of me anyway. You're speaking on behalf of whoever's filling your pockets. So this becomes the problem. That we have to be honest with ourselves. And we have to be honest with others. That when your constituents, especially if you've run on the ticket of being a Muslim politician, and you've promised the Muslim people, I will stand up for you. And then when it becomes hard, right, to say what the Muslims want you to say, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to say what they want? Or correct things, not saying incorrect things. No, we're not asking for them to set a tax on non-Muslims or anything like that. We're not asking anything like that. We're asking for simple things. But from an Islamic principle, from an Islamic perspective, then it becomes too hard to say anything because you're too afraid of losing your seat. You see in this country right now, there's non-Muslim politicians who have spoken out in support of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And they lost intra-party elections because of that. So much money was poured into their regions, their zones, and their counties, and their party, their lines, and they lost these elections because they knew at this point in time they have to speak the truth. And they knew they would lose the election, but they stuck with the truth. We as Muslims, whether we're politicians or not, are we willing to stick with the truth? Are we willing to speak the truth? Are we even willing to listen to the truth in front of us? Or are we okay with going to these LGBTQ marches and marching with them and saying, oh look, these are our constituents too. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly telling you, what you're doing is wrong. The support you're giving to these people is wrong. They live in this country, let them live, fine. But we don't have to vocally, politically, or in any way, shape or form have to do anything special for them. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us not to. Who comes first, your constituents or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to winning an election, a lot of times, we're willing to forego these principles. I don't know, I don't plan on ever running for office, but if any of us ever plans to run for office, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from selling out our principles. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and keep us on the right path. And I remember my cousin, he said this 8 years ago, I'm not going to take his name because many of the people here, they know him. He said 8 years ago, he's much younger. He said, watch Asad Bhai, in 8 years, we're going to have a dog running for president. And today I realized, honestly, if we elected a dog, we'd be better off. At least a dog has more humanity. I saw a video of a dog in one of these war zones. The dog took a dead cat and he made a hole and he buried the dead cat. At least the dog had this much dignity and this much respect of a fellow species to make sure that he puts him into the ground properly and he gives him a proper burial. We have become and descended into such creatures that we are disintegrating human bodies and not even caring about it, not even having a second thought about it. Human remains are being destroyed. Graveyards are being overturned. And nobody's willing to speak about it because I don't want to lose my seat. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, may He give us a better understanding, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our sins of omission and commission. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.